of the players that we're about to cover here.
Exactly.
Gerry Thompson and Brian Kibler,
And
both
here they are making
Star
the die
City
roll.
Games premium writers. All right, shuffling up and getting ready for first game of the match. Brian Kibler sporting Ascension sleeves, a very festive shirt on today. Gerry, that's a nice shirt. That seems like a good company right there.
I've heard of them. No, I think this is the real test for Brian Kibler's deck. Brian Kibler came into this tournament saying that his deck wasn't quite ready for prime time, but he was going to play it anyway because he wanted to help get it there. He wanted to practice with this deck that was fun, and practice it looks like is going to end up being quite profitable for him this weekend.
Oh yeah, I mean, even at the top, even with just top 4 finish after beating the Cobbly deck in the top 8 yesterday, I'm sure he's very happy with how things turned out. This is a new list for him. It's something he's just working on. The one thing that's interesting though is Gerry's deck does have black spot removal, and that's something that Brian hasn't had to fight.
Absolutely.
In the entire tournament thus far.
And most of that spot removal can take out, you know, every creature that Kibler has. Having a Crusader before just be essentially a trump is something that is not going to be the case for him in this situation.
Yeah, now Gerry gets the early Stoneforge Mystic and shows Brian, all right, well, I already have a sword, and I found another sword. Besides that, I just have a lot of land.
And this is one of the things that we saw happen before, is that when he was playing against Josh Silvestri, Silvestri would tutor up a sword or some other kind of equipment, and then Kibler would just respond with a, depending if he was sideboarded or not, a Duress or an Inquisition of Kozilek, and then away would go the tutored for equipment.
Yeah, I mean, this spot, though, just in general, like, his opponent has the Stoneforge, his opponent has a sword, and even with Gerry just on all lands besides that, like, this game looks pretty rough for Brian at this point. Brian has, like, a lot of things he can play next turn that would be pretty strong, but he is by no means out of the woods. Double Magnet's going to do some work here, though. Alright, so Gerry's got to think about his play now. Sword suddenly becomes a lot less attractive, but he's going to go ahead and equip that. He's going to play an Inquisition of his own, and he's going to see an Inquisition of Kozilek, a Preordain, Contagion Clasp, and 2 islands. I imagine he'll be taking either the Clasp or the Preordain. The Inquisition has lost a lot of value at this point.
I definitely like taking the Clasp just in general. I mean, it doesn't have to do anything right now to be very painful later.
And this is one of those really important decisions here. He's going to go ahead and take the Clasp. It could really just let the Double Magnet get out of hand. Now, Brian's Inquisition will be a whiff here. I think he knows that. He's probably just going to activate the Ink Moth, get him for a poison. It depends what he finds with his Preordain, though. Now, what Brian really wants to do here is play land and a Phyrexian Crusader. That would be his ideal play.
These two apparently were out at a club last night dancing. You can see a little bit of the tiredness in Brian Kibler's face there as he yawns.
I thought he got less tired as time went on. He has this weird kind of thing. Alright, so Brian gets his extra card off the preordain here, and let's see what he found. Is it just going to be a bash with the Ink Moth, or he found a Contagion Clasp, and that's going to
awesome.
It's going to put a counter on that Stoneforge Mystic. Brian's going to pass the turn back. It looks like Gerry drew a spell, and I have to see. First thing he's going to do is enter combat, and Brian will tap that down with a Stumble Magnet. Ooh, but Gerry has a Jace off the top of his library, and that's about as good as it gets. He finds a go for the throat with that Jace. That's going to make sure that Phyrexian Crusader doesn't get out of hand in this game at any point. And Brian's in a really rough spot here. He doesn't have a Creeping Tar Pit. It's really hard for him to attack this Jace.
I mean, a part of me almost wonders if, given his difficulty with Planeswalkers, if a card like Vampire Hexmage might be the kind of thing that he's looking for.
Yeah, you never know. It certainly doesn't seem like the main deck could have.
Oh no, not for the main deck. Not for the main deck. I mean, the problem with Infect is that a card like Hexmage, which might be far more reasonable if he was attacking players' life totals regularly the normal way, becomes much less valuable if it's basically just a Vindicate for Planeswalkers. I mean, yes, you could attack with it, but it's not likely that those attacks are going to do much for you in most games. And he's surprisingly not a good blocker, despite everything being small enough where a 2-power first striker seems like it would be great. 3-power first striker is actually a lot better. I like 5-power first strikers.
Now Brian's in a rough spot here. Gerry has assembled some pretty powerful permanents on his side of the table, and this is after Brian inquisitioned his opponent on turn 2 and left him with only a single spell in hand. But since then, Gerry has only drawn 1 spell, and he's still in this position. Well, he's only naturally drawn 1 spell. Jace obviously allowed him to draw more than a few spells, but it just shows you the power of these Caw-Blade decks. All Gerry has is Stoneforge Mystic and Dream. That's all you need.
Now, one of the things we had talked about was Kibler's use of Jace Beleren as a way to kill primarily Jace Mind Sculptors. But even though Jace Beleren, and if he were to run more Jace Belerens, does help him with that fight, it doesn't do anything to deal with a Gideon that might show up from one of the Caw-Blade decks.
It's interesting for Brian because he only has 1 counter left on his Tumble Magnet. So now this turn his mana is like almost certainly going to be tied into his Clasp. And you really don't want to be tying your mana into a Clasp and giving your opponent extra turns to brainstorm with his or Jace.
Yeah, a 4-mana Icy Manipulator effect, that's rough. That's a rough effect that you're having to pull.
Yeah, and the Tumble Magnet is quite good against these sword type strategies, but it's good when you have other things to go with it. It's good when you're developing yourself. It's not good to make a game go long when your opponent has a Jace in play and you don't.
Yes. And there's another Stoneforge Mystic. So now Gerry Thompson has 2 Stoneforge Mystics in play to go with his Sword of Feast and Famine and his Jace. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a, I missaw that. That is a Squadron Hawk. My bad.
And now the Squadron Hawk's going to grab 3 more Squadron Hawks. Gerry is probably going to brainstorm with the Jace, and he will use the brainstorm ability to put 2 Squadron Hawks back on the top of his library, at which point he can cast another Squadron Hawk, which will then put the 2 Squadron Hawks that he put back into his hand.
Now, this kind of interaction with Jace and the Squadron Hawks is an interaction that I think people were trying to break the moment that those 2 cards were both legal.
Oh, yeah.
And Brian Kibler, ironically, is the one that showcased with Caw Go a deck that could do just that. And previously, I think that a lot of people were trying to assemble a Caw Blade, Jace the Mind Sculptor combo as a part of an almost like that was their whole point of their deck. And what Kibler did was essentially just make a blue-white control deck that had that in there as an opportunity, as an option, where with Squadron Hawks as the only real creatures. And right now we're seeing the legacy of that in Caw Blade.
Not yet.
Gerry's a very perceptive player. That's something I like about him. He's very willing to learn from games that he's played.
Now, we talked earlier about how Jace Bellerins were a good way for a Caw Blade player to fight another Caw Blade player when it comes to this Jace war. But what it does do, it does mean that you're giving up the ability to have this incredibly absurd interaction between Jace the Mind Sculptor and the Squadron Hawks. Because right here, I mean, Gerry didn't need much more help, but I almost feel like he's just putting nails into a coffin, and Kibler is just kind of smiling and being like, okay, I'm being nailed in now.
Yeah, it's a pretty rough spot for him. One thing that's, Gerry was talking to me yesterday, and he was saying that, he saw an opponent not attack, and it didn't make sense to him, especially because he thought his opponent was good. So he assumed that his opponent was all in on one guy, and that was their whole plan. They were just trying to make the game last that long. So he assumed they had an Inferno Titan, and he played around it where he otherwise wouldn't have. And he was able to win the match, and he was talking about that yesterday. And it seemed like he's at a point in his play where he's very, very comfortable making difficult plays and difficult play decisions, just over and over again, round after round. But he's going through all of the possibilities. Brian goes ahead. He casts Inquisition of Kozilek, and he's not going to be happy with what he sees.
Oh, Gideon.
So he has an Inquisition and a Go for the Throat up toward the front. Oh no, just an Inquisition. So
Drafto's over here with me,
I
folks.
suppose he's not overly worried about the Go for the Throat. Yeah, now Brian goes ahead. He
I mean, go ahead.
Interestingly enough, I believe that Tumblemine only has one counter left on it.
Yes.
So he might have to eat a sword hit here. Of course, Into the Royal actually works pretty well with a used-up Tumble Magnet.
This is true. Now, Brian, has just one card left, does it look like?
Yes, it looks like he's on one card left in the hand. Gerry has a full grip.
I mean, I'm trying to imagine a series of plays in which Brian can come into this, and they all involve one card. They all involve Skitherix.
Yeah, Gideon from Gerry, though, closes that gap pretty quickly.
I'm just saying, I'm trying to imagine a scenario.
Yeah.
There's a mana leak to stop Gideon from coming to the party.
That's interesting. Gerry chose to try to cast the Gideon pre-combat. He's trying to get more value out of a sword hit. Brian chooses not to tap down the Stoneforge Mystic. Keeping the counter on his Tome Magnet is more important right now. But once again, it becomes very difficult to proliferate this Tome Magnet because he has to deal with an on-table Jace.
Just being forced to have that 4 mana be tied up is just absolutely huge.
Keep that. Don't care.
Brian announces yes as he draws his card. Surprised he didn't get in there for poison with his land.
Oh, and here comes the fate.
Yep, and he says, all right, well, I understand that, you know, you're on this plan. With what I have in my hand, I can probably just Fate Seal you out of this game, win that way. And that seems like a pretty reasonable strategy. He's basically got it locked up.
If there were a way to do it in this game state, I could imagine Gerry simultaneously activating the ultimate of his Jace and attacking for the kill. But unfortunately, Jace, the Mind Sculptor's ability is a sorcery, so he can't do them at the same time.
Now, Stoneforge Mystic is down to a 1-power creature, even with the sword on it. Now if, oh, it's a dragon. And Prime packs it in.
Yep.
And they're off to game 2 here. I'm interested to see what their plans are. I think Brian's probably going to be bringing in some number of Duress, an extra Jace Bellerin, and
which is going to be mirrored from Gerry Thompson, who will also be bringing in, I believe, a Jace Bellerin and Duresses.
No, it's interesting. I don't know if Gerry actually brings in the Duresses. I think the Inquisitions are good here, but Duress really only hits. Doesn't really hit much.
I mean, even hitting a Tumble Magnet or a Contagion Clasp. I mean, any of that. There's a lot of stuff in there.
I just can't think of anything in my main deck that I'd want less. I feel like you already need to find room for your spot removal.
Well, he can take out a Doomblade.
Oh yeah. I mean, is he playing Doomblade? Isn't he playing Go for the Throat?
He's got 1 Go for the Throat, 1 Condemn, 1 Doomblade, 1 Day of Judgment.
Okay. That's an interesting cast of removal spells. The one of Day of Judgment seems exceptionally strong. That's something I doubt anybody expected to see from an Esper Clawblade deck.
I know Patrick Chapin was saying that when he was playing the deck at, yesterday, and he only got quote-unquote stopped in his quest for this top 8 by, in the very last round, being paired against Gerry Thompson and deciding to give the his friend just the scoops because he got the deck from him.
So we're about to do the Star City Games Premium giveaway. The winner of this will receive 6 free months of Premium. And I'd like to know what deck Sam Party was playing.
Right. Sam Party, and for a hint, the other decks that are in this top 8 are Blue-White-Black Cawblade, Blue-White Cawblade, Infect, and Valakut. What is the missing archetype that was in the top 8 from yesterday? And you would put your answer to pound SCG Premium. The winner of this is going to get 6 months. So we'll be telling you from amongst the correct answers which one of you gets that free 6 months.
And again, this is Sam Party's deck. He top-8'd the event this event that we're still covering now. And
one of the things that's interesting is that when it comes to the archetypes that were moved forward, all of the decks that were basically the non-blue based decks, there were 2 of them, got knocked down, and blue moved on. Kibler is the only one of these blue players not to be running Jace the Mind Sculptor. Yeah, talking with Patrick Chapin yesterday, I know one of the things that he had said about the Singleton Day of Judgment was that, because he's playing this exact list that Gerry Thompson was playing, was that it ended up, just by being present in his deck, between Preordains and between Jace the Mind Sculptor, just doing an awful lot of work for him. He didn't feel like he wanted a second one, but just having access to it at some point in a game if he needed it was really valuable.
Yeah, and that's the thing about a card like Day of Judgment is sometimes that's your out. You know, you're playing against Valakut, you're playing against Rug, you're playing against all these different decks, and sometimes you have a Day of Judgment in your deck, and that's the only card you can get to win. And when you have access to cards like Preordain and Jace the Mind Sculptor, and you're thinning your deck with Hawks and with Stoneforge Mystics and with Fetch Lands, suddenly one Day of Judgment can come up surprisingly often.
I haven't done the counts on it, but one of the things I sometimes like to do with decks that have a fair amount of library manipulation, you know, in this case, the Caw-Blade decks, between Jaces, Preordains, Hawks, and Stoneforge Mystics, they have a lot of shuffling, and they have a lot of possibilities for search. Sometimes I like to see just how long it takes me to get to a random card in my deck, because that can actually give you a sense of whether or not a Singleton is a reasonable call in such a deck. Sometimes it's a huge deal.
Yeah, one card can make a big difference.
Starting off in Inquisition. I see Inquisition, I see Preordain, Contagion Clasp, Pummel Magnet, and I think a Jace Beleren.
Yeah, that's a pretty good starting hand from Brian. He needs to draw a land, but if he does, he's looking to be in a pretty good spot here. Now, if I were Gerry, I'd probably just nab that Jace. Depends on what's in my hand, though. Perhaps the Inquisition.
The Inquisition might be a solid thing to take as well. I need to look at that again, he says. Let me give this one a good think.
And he gets rid of the Inquisition, and passes the turn back to Brian. Brian in this turn is at least going to have a Preordain.
And this Preordain is basically looking for a blue source.
Well, Brian plays land, passes back to Gerry. Gerry has turn 2 Squadron Hawk. And Squadron Hawk does a really good job of gumming up the board. Brian has a lot of cards that do well against that, but you know, here he's just going to play a Jace and take it down. They're just going to go to 1 counter on Gerry's turn. But Brian will have a Clasp for a bird, which will make things more interesting. Gerry's at least going to have to play another Squadron Hawk.
It's correct.
Now, let's see
okay.
here.
Interestingly, looking at the information we have from one of our callers, it looks as not callers, one of our runners. It looks like the Sam Party question we asked earlier. we're not going to give the answer yet, but it does look like the clues that we gave earlier might have been a little misleading. So just keep that in mind, that some of our clues. The big clue is to go to StarCityGames.com and use that as your guidepost. Looking at the game, we do have a Jace Beleren on the table fighting off both a Squadron Hawk and Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah, the Stoneforge Mystic goes ahead and grabs Sword of Feast and Famine. Now, Brian's Jace only has one counter left on it, so Brian in his turn needs to have a Contagion Clasp and something else if he wants this Jace to live without taking it up. He's probably just going to take it up. He needs to prevent a Mind Sculpt from coming down and closing the game out for Gerry.
And there's a Clasp.
The Clasp is going to take out the Hawk. And Brian's going to take up that Jace, it looks like.
Gerry pulls an island from that draw. Another Stoneforge Mystic drawn by Gerry.
Now, having the Jace on the table is just such a huge thing in this match. You really just get this advantage that never ever lets up. So as long as Brian can, keep Gerry from developing a very strong board, or keep Gerry from he just wants to keep the Jace on the table as long as possible to prevent a Mind Sculpt from coming down and closing him out.
One of the things that's probably difficult when it comes to where Kibler's deck is built in order to fight this fight is that while he was able to beat the blue-white builds partly off of a Crusader being able to pretend like it's a very powerful, wall, in this matchup he doesn't have the ability to lean on a card like Crusader, and so all the little cards can actually just get their work done. Crusader can just get killed by the black creature kill that Kibler hasn't really faced with this yet. There we have a Tumble Magnet.
And Tumble Magnet's going to be pretty good here. It'll work well with the Clasp. The Clasp, along with the Jace, will actually allow Brian to start drawing cards off that Jace again without letting Gerry draw them. But Gerry can change that simply by playing some extra Hawk.
Now, I think one of the strongest plays, if you could get it onto the table right now, would be for Gerry to get a Gideon into play. But that mana that's open represents the potential for a mana leak or even a deprive from Brian Kibler. Here's yet another Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah, and Brian's not going to be happy about that.
A second Sword of Feast and Famine. I believe that was the second one, yes?
That's definitely what he wants to be doing. He's getting another Sword of Feast and Famine. Really, really wants to equip one of those. Now let's see if Brian has the mana leak here. He may not even want to use it. Oh, there he goes. I guess he really just has to. Both players draw their extra card off the Chase. Gerry doesn't even look. He's tapped out.
Yep.
He gets no value from looking at that card. I wonder if Gerry has the Sun Titans in from his sideboard.
I mean, in a Jace war, he has Jace Beleren in his main deck ×1. He can board in a second one, which I wouldn't be surprised if he did. As you said, though, most of the cards that Gerry has seem pretty good for this matchup.
Yeah, it seems like a really difficult sideboarding situation.
And it looks like the 6th mana has been achieved. Oh boy, Skitherix.
Skitherix is big and scary. I will give my Dragon Haste.
Nope, he's hitting back
No?
on D.
Cool.
I would have liked to have hasted there and hit the poison just to get it on him. Just so that Contagion Clasp can be a clock.
Yeah, I mean, right now though, this play is significantly safer. Now he gets to block and protect his own Jace. It prevents Gerry from getting that Jace advantage. And even if Gerry goes ahead and plays a card like Gideon, Brian can easily handle its effect right now. So Gerry entered combat, and Brian tapped down one of Gerry's Squadron Hawks, using a Double Magnet counter pretty aggressively, but he has the Contagion Clasp. He's probably pretty comfortable with that. Now, suddenly, like, this game doesn't look so good for Gerry. I really thought Gerry had a pretty strong grasp on this game. Well, there's
Gideon.
a Gideon, and that may help a bit. And Gerry will demand that Skitherix comes at the Gideon. And hopefully Brian does not follow in his good friend Patrick Sullivan's footsteps. Play another Skitherix here.
I think, amusingly, what would be an incredible moment for him right now is if he had an Into the Royal in his hand. He has an Into the Royal on his board, and he said that one of his plans against Planeswalkers was to have an untimely for his opponent Into the Royal, pop up a card like Gideon, and then come in for either the kill or just for the that blood, so to speak. Get some poison in there. He has the mana then at that point to have Into the Royal and activate Contagion Clasp, and basically have his opponent on 5 poison if he has an Into the Royal.
Yeah, even with just his board state, he can put the Gideon down to 4. Then
it's not like Gideon is going to be able to kill that Skitherix. Not
oh
if
yeah, I mean he can just leave open 2 mana, regenerated.
It's still shocking to me that Skitherix has regeneration as well. I guess I think I didn't realize it because I had killed it so many times. I had never realized that I'd always killed it right away.
Because if you didn't, you just died.
Oh wow, knocks it down to 1 by having a little bit of help from Creeping Tar Pit, and then Contagion Clasps a Hawk.
Yeah, this doesn't look too bad at all.
Well, the thing is I think he only has 1 token left on that Tumble Magnet, and unless he has another Tumble Magnet, he's not going to probably want to tap it, even to save a Jace, I don't think.
Well, doesn't his Jace have 3 counters right now?
But the Gideon could attack.
That's true.
Gideon is a card I criminally underrated when it came out. Everyone else said it was really good, and I didn't quite see it, and it was partly, I think, because I just wasn't conceiving of what it was really going to be like when it was in play.
Oh yeah, I mean, the first game I played with Gideon, I knew I was in love with Gideon. I think it's even good in aggressive decks. I think it's just good everywhere.
Yeah. We were seeing it yesterday in quite a number of aggressive decks. Matt Sperling, who was just a breath out of top 8, was playing it in his green-white aggressive Vengevine deck. Okay, he does still have a counter left on that magnet. Gideon comes in. Jace goes away. But being tapped out means that he can't follow up with a subsequent Jace to punish him for that.
You know, he has Mana Leak backup, so it's not really the end of the world. Like, Brian can't do like some big like haymaker of a turn here.
At this point, if I were Brian, I really wouldn't mind just, depending, particularly if he gets a mana, he could activate both the Tar Pit and the Skithiryx. But I wouldn't mind just attacking Gerry with that Skithiryx and letting the Gideon live. Oh, there we go. He doesn't have to go there. He can activate the Creeping Tar Pit if he would like to, attack Gideon with Creeping Tar Pit, and attack Thompson with Skithiryx if he were to want to, and still have 4 mana left. 4 mana being the magic number for those Contagion Clasps.
I mean, it's really important that he activates Contagion Clasp now. Or at least before his next untap step.
Here's the Creeping Tar Pit. Oh, still thinking about it. There is the question of a card like Doomblade, or, pardon me, rather, Go for the Throat. Even Disfigure from Gerry Thompson is actually very potentially problematic. Looking over the sideboard list, unlike a lot of the black, blue, white decks, there are no Disfigures here, so he does not have that option. He just has the option, in terms of his individual creature kill spells, of 4 Condemns between main and sideboard, of 2 Doomblades between main and sideboard, and 1 Go for the Throat.
Oh wow, so he really only has one answer to the Crusader in his entire deck.
2 if you count Day of Judgment, but that's still... The Crusader is much better than we were initially reckoning. The judges that brought over the lists to us, sometimes it's very illuminating having that little bit of extra information.
Oh yeah, I mean, Brian here has not drawn his Crusaders the way that we've seen him draw them all weekend.
Right.
And that may be a big factor here.
Right.
You know, Brian's deck, one of its major strengths is the fact that he's playing 4 of a card, a Paladin Envec that is pro-white and pro-red, and
Right.
just, that's so good in today's format.
So, if you were Brian Kibler, do you tap out with your Contagion Clasp and open up Skithiryx to the potential to die? I think I would, just to keep that, to keep my Tumble Magnet going. I think it's got the poison in there already.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, tapping your opponent's sorted guy is just so important, and, you know, losing the value of a Tumble Magnet.
The Contagion, he's got actually a whole tap left because of those Contagion Clasps. Wow, the Contagion Clasp with the Tumble Magnet is so good.
Yeah, Gerry will get a 5 poison.
And then he's
Gerry
done.
just packs it up.
He knows he can't kill his opponent before the 2 Clasps can kill him.
Yep.
Not to mention whether or not he has an answer to Skithiryx.
I mean, right there, Jerry's going to 5 poison, and then he'd have to play multiple flyers to prevent himself from dying, or another Gideon. And that was a very interesting game. We saw Brian just ticking up a Jace and just letting both players draw a card over and over and over again, and just preventing Gerry from ever getting anything really going. Gerry just had to, Gerry was playing from behind because this Jace was just dominating the table, preventing from Gerry from even putting up a presence, and he just really rode that to victory.
Gerry just
played very well.
Put down 5 little beaters, all of which he was trying to plick away at the Jace, but a Contagion Clasp, but that with a Tumble Magnet just kept it from actually making any real dent.
Yeah, and by the time Gerry was actually able to deal with the Jace, at that point Brian was able to, stick a Skithiryx, and not too long later, Skithiryx had ended the game.
Play around the 1 condemn, but it seems like a losing proposition.
I mean, I remember last night when we were sitting in the hotel room and I was playing some Magic Online. You kept then just kind of almost exclaiming with excitement about the combination of Contagion Clasp and Tumble Magnet, because it's just sometimes so incredible. Imagine if Kibler had drawn a second Tumble Magnet, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean,
2 Tumble Magnets and a Contagion Clasp even if you are spending 4 mana a turn, your opponent isn't doing anything.
All right.
Yeah, I mean the big thing here is that he's also an infect deck, so the proliferate's good on a number of different levels. It's good with his Planeswalker. It's good with his it's good with his Tunnel Magnets, and it's good with his infect creatures. So it's this like multifaceted card that just has a bunch of different uses, and it kills mana creatures. Like, one of the big things in this format is having a way to effectively kill a Lotus Cobra, and that's a very reasonable way to do it. It's something that then can give you a lot of value later on in the game as you start going down the home stretch.
Now, for some players who have been experimenting with Contagion Clasp, I think that I've seen it in a number of lists as a 4-of, but I think its only home that has made sense to me as a 4-of has been in a deck that can poison you, so that a Contagion Clasp isn't just influencing the board position or influencing your mana development or other cards like that, but it's actually actively causing a potential death, so that the Contagion Clasp itself can kill you. I think if you're not playing poison, it's okay to have Clasp in a deck if you can get some value, but Kibler's deck here shows just what that means. Like, yes, the Skitherix was going to threaten for the next turn kill if he didn't have an answer, but even if he had an answer, I don't think there was anything that Gerry could have drawn that would have saved him before the Clasps got him.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, Brian had basically closed the game up. And it was weird, because from our angle, it didn't even look that over, because Gerry's deck is just so powerful that there are a lot of cards Gerry could have drawn when we got him out of that hole.
I think for the Legacy event, I'm gonna rock.
I'm interested to see how Gerry sideboarded, too.
In talking with Patrick yesterday, my guess is that he's going to bring in the Tectonic Edge from his sideboard to go up to 2 Tectonic Edges. He's going to probably bring in Jace Beleren, bringing in the Duress most likely, and maybe Sun Titans. But again, that's a lot of cards. I don't know what you take out for all those cards.
I actually know how to play Standard. The only time I played Legacy in my life were Star City Opens.
I think Doomblade definitely comes out.
Yeah, I mean, Doomblade can kill a Necropede if Kibler even still has it in his deck. It can also kill. Let's see.
No, that's it. I would kill a. Nope.
Nope.
No. That'll do it.
Yep.
But not too cheap.
I mean, he may want Condemn also. We never know.
The problem is that Condemn can take out a Skitherix. It can take out a Creeping Tar Pit. Those are valuable things to take out, but not being able to touch the Phyrexian Crusader is a kind of a liability. And they've seen each other's lists. They know what the other person has.
It's true. Brian just had the. This is interesting. Brian's hand is really good, if I'm reading correctly here.
What are you looking at to try to make that decision?
Brian leaned back in his chair. He was talking very fluently, like just if somebody's talking, it's the way they normally talk. If they're leaning back, if they're just in a relaxed fashion, it generally means that they're very comfortable, and that usually denotes strength.
Are you a Caro's Book of Tells reader?
I am, in fact.
There we go. There we go. Required reading for tournament Magic players, if you ask me.
Yeah. I've read the book 3 times. One time was 2 days before I won a Pro Tour.
I can't make that claim.
Now, Gerry leads off with a Duress. He sees 2 mana leaks, a Preordain, and what looks like a Skitherix to me. He can't touch Skitherix, so he's got a choice between one of 2 mana leaks or the Preordain. I think he's just going to nab the Preordain and pass the turn back to Brian.
Those mana leaks can come, since Brian Kibler's on the play, they can come too late to the party. There's the beginnings of it.
Yeah, and Stoneforge is really not what Kibler wants to see. Now that he's on, Gerry knows too that he's on double Mana Leak, Skithirex, and now 2 random cards and some lands. Mana Leak does not have value once he plays this Stoneforge Mystic. He can just put the equipment directly into play.
For the 9 a.m. draft
Brian's really going to need something like a Tumble Magnet if he really wants to stay in this game. Into the Royal would also work pretty well. So would Phyrexian Crusader.
I would like to see a Crusader come to this game. We haven't seen that happen yet for him.
Yeah, I mean the Crusader is definitely a huge part of this matchup, and it's somewhat odd that Brian hasn't drawn a single copy yet.
Opens with Duress. He appears to have a Jace Beleren. Which
Jace Beleren, 2 Mana
correctly
Leaks, Skithirex, and they're up to 3-drop World. Now, Brian really needs to answer the Stoneforge right now. So, this might just be it.
I mean, he can throw that Ink Moth in the way, but that doesn't do much work, not unless he can follow up with a Contagion Clasp and then an activation, and that's a lot of mana.
It's just kind of giving Gerry a time walk.
Oy. He appears to be thinking about his hand now.
And the other thing is that, Gerry has not played a land yet this turn, so if he just decides to block with the Ink Moth Nexus, then Gerry could just haymaker him with the Jace. It's a really tough spot. And you might just have to eat the hit. But eating a hit from a sword, it's not a place you ever want to be.
It just feels so terrible. I mean... This is a hard...
Once again, this is a final call for draft open signups. Final call for draft open signups.
Yeah, Brian discards a Mana Leak, and Gerry untaps his lands, sword, and passes the turn to Brian. Now, Brian may think Gerry has a counter in his hand.
4th land says go.
Now, what does Gerry want to do once he hits that 4th land? Does he have a Jace in his hand?
It really depends, like, you might just sit back and ride it. I mean, right now you're in a position where if you've got your own Mana Leaks, you can... Let's see what happens there. Kibler just putting it out there, seeing if there's a response from Gerry that's meaningful. I honestly didn't think that Gerry had it, the way he was sort of sitting there.
I mean, that was a little brutal.
And now he can
Can't let
afford...
that Skithirex hang out on the stack for that long.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Tapped out. Open to anything that Kibler can do to him. What is that? What would that be? Honestly, if it's not 2 Tumble Magnets, I don't know that it matters too much.
Yeah, at this point, he really needs a pair of Tumble Magnets. And he will certainly have no hand after Gerry's next attack step.
So, here we go. Getting the poison in.
Besides him coming in. 2 poison Gerry.
And those Hawks are just going to gum up the works. Gerry, even though he only has 3 lands, is out casting his opponent like a mad hellion.
Yeah, and this is one of the major advantages of the Caw-Blade deck is just how cheap the deck is. And not only how cheap it is, but how redundant your cheap cards are, how they let you just do things without paying much mana for such an extended period of time. Like, one Stoneforge Mystic, that makes those 2 lands have things to do for more than one turn. One Squadron Hawk, you have 2 drops forever.
It's almost like, a Squadron Hawk doesn't have a lot of gas, but it's like a Prius. You don't need much gas in it for it to keep running.
Yeah. Now,